Warning: the following content is intended for mature audiences. Subjects such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, and suicide will occur and may disturb some viewers. The views and opinions in this video are not those of YouTube, its content creators, or affiliates. Viewer discretion is advised. And welcome back. As you can tell, I have the sheet up on the screen now because I realized I made a boo-boo in the last video. Apparently, recording on a phone, it inverts the image, so I just had to press one button. Oops. I'm not as smart with computers as I thought. But I can have that up there now, and I can have it plain and free for everyone to see. And if you're joining me again, welcome back. I realized that I was really fidgety in the last video, and if that set some people off or put it, lower down on the priority list, I do apologize. That was a really big demon nugget for me to be dealing with. Because like I said, I have a fear of public speaking, and it wasn't exactly, easy to, deal with and talk to and be able to put it out for people to watch and judge and talk about. But hopefully it gets easier for me from here on out, because this is something that I feel needs to be talked about. It needs to be dealt with in a way that people can actually feel comfortable coming forward with their PTSD and their depression and anxieties and all that stuff. Because in the comments section, I want people to be able to go there and talk about what they've had to do and what they've had to deal with and what they've been through, and do it in a safe and comfortable environment. So if you have any stories or any statements or comments or anything like that, feel free to leave a comment. I do have to ask though, if you're going to be somebody who's like, oh, you're all just a bunch of bitches, you just need to grow up, man up. I hate that phrase. I hate being told to man up, because what if you're a woman? Because, like I said, anybody can get it. Any human being can get it. Women are human beings too. Kind of hard for them to man up. That's a disturbing thought. But, regardless, the subject matter I wanted to talk about today, because I kind of compressed some things in on the last video, but when I was starting all of this, I created a pre-prepared speech. That way, if I had investors or interested partners or anything like that, I could give them a speech in a more professional manner. That way, I could come across as more professional, more succinct about everything that I believe and have experienced about PTSD. And I've got my computer over here to reference that speech, because I figured since how I got PTSD was the first subject of it, I'll make the rest of the sections of the speech into their own little videos, give them a little bit more time to breathe and flesh out. But this next one, I wanted to talk about what PTSD is. And if you think about it in a way, because like my shirt for reference, that's the Grim Reaper, that's death. And if we think about PTSD the same way we do about death, about it being an entity of its own, it makes it a little bit, it may not make it easier for everyone, but it makes it more sensible. It gives a lot more people a better handle to actually grab onto it, which is PTSD is an entity. It's not just a series of events. It's not just this thing or that thing. It's its own entity. It's this organic thing, which makes sense because no one's life no one's life is rigid. No one's life is stone. And thinking about it as an entity the way we do with death actually makes a lot of sense to me, at least, because death doesn't care what gender you are. It doesn't care what nationality you are. It doesn't care what religious beliefs you have, what political beliefs you have. It doesn't care about any of that stuff. Man, woman, black, white, Christian, Muslim, any of that stuff. It doesn't care. Are you a human being? Yes. Are you in control of the fact that you're able to take your own pulse? Yes. You're going to have a risk of dealing with PTSD. You're going to have a risk of dealing with death. Because the only thing that is less selective over who it's going to affect than PTSD is death. It's the only thing out there that's going to come for everyone, because as they've started to meme on the internet, 10 out of 10 people die from death. Everybody, there are no immortals. Everybody is going to pass away one day. And it's going to be sad when people pass away. But PTSD is the same type of entity. It's this thing that doesn't care. It's going to come after you. That's all there is to it. But it doesn't have to come after you the way that is final. It's not an ending, like I alluded to in the last video. But if you look back at what I said with PTSD and pain being the same thing, you look back on previous iterations of PTSD. You had trench mind, you had shell shock from, pretty much the 19th century. Before then it was trench mind. You trace it all the way back and you get to pain. That's the origin point of it all. And by considering it as an entity, the same way we do with death, with the Grim Reaper, we can actually start to put a name to it. We can start to put a face to it. We can, hopefully not my face. That's scarring enough as it is. But if we make it so that it's actually something we've got a handle on, something we can actually grab a hold of and start to deal with, then it makes it a lot easier to actually understand, what is PTSD? How is it going to affect people? And hopefully, like I said, these videos help, talking about my life and everything with PTSD. But there's 7 billion plus people in this world. That's 7 billion plus different opinions, different views, different preferences. What's going to work for one is not going to work for another. It might help, but it's not going to be the definitive way. But that's what PTSD is. It's this entity. It's this creature that just latches on and doesn't let go. And, like I said in the last video, it's not a bad thing or a good thing once you actually start to think about it, and once you start to get comfortable with it, and once you start taking control of your own demons. It is, however, difficult to do that, and that's one thing that people let overcome their attempts. And with PTSD, it's a wound. It's an injury you've sustained. It's just that it's a mental wound. It's an emotional injury. And if you think about it like that, you don't just stitch up a wound and call it good. You go in, you take out any fragments of whatever caused the wound. You clean up and disinfect the area. Then you stitch it up. And that's what we have to do with PTSD. There's various different ways. The most common are psychiatrists and psychologists. But with having this wound, there is no set guaranteed way, because with a body, it is set in stone. Bodies work the same way. They may have allergies or something like that that makes it a little bit different, but they all still work on the same principle. The human mind doesn't. I hate watching movies that have a lot of blood and gore and everything in them because I'm squeamish. I will faint at the sight of, injured flesh. There's a TV show I was watching last night that had a surprise wrist moment, and I had to get up and walk away and not think about it. I had to think about something bright and sunshiny and funny and distract myself. Meanwhile, how many people out there watching this and hearing that moment of mine are thinking of me as being a little weak behind the ears? Because they're able to watch blood and gore all day long and not be affected by it and laugh about it. I can't. I can't watch blood and gore. And I will admit, I am a little baby about it. But that's me. And that just highlights how many different ways there are for people to react to something. Granted, I realize that going through what I've gone through is not exactly a commonplace thing. But how many people get their heart broken by somebody that cheated on them? How many people have gone through the death of their parents? Or with the military, they've seen a friend of theirs, a squad mate, find something that cut them short. It's not easy for everyone to deal with it. Some people can take it better than others. And that's not to say that some people are better at watching someone die than others. Because everyone has somebody that they're connected to in such a way that if they were to not be there anymore, it would just absolutely mess with them. It would, take them down a notch. And PTSD does that quite expertly. It's had hundreds and thousands of years to perfect its A game. And that's what I've been doing the last, 10 and a half, 11 years, is I've been perfecting my A game. It's not perfect, it's not without its faults, but it's a lot better than just sitting around and popping a pill whenever I have problems come up. Yeah, that works for some people, but it didn't work for me. For me, I had to work through it. I had to take that pain and I had to clean the wound. And once we actually realize what it is that PTSD is, and we start thinking about it as an entity, we start thinking about it as something tangible, then we can actually start getting through it. Then we can start actually making something out of it. And I realize I sound like I'm rambling, but I do have a point to this, because how much easier is it to just sit there and think that, oh, PTSD, it's something wrong with me? How much harder is it to think there's nothing wrong with me, there's nothing wrong with having PTSD? There's nothing wrong with having a scar. There's Once you've gotten hurt, it really, really, really is hard to get people to actually be comfortable with experiencing more pain to counteract it. It's like an emotional brush fire when you've got a wild blaze going on. You know, you start a brush fire and they cancel each other out. That's not exactly what I'm trying to get at. You know, you don't like go through and cause yourself more emotional pain to actually go through and cancel out the PTSD pain. But you will have to explore some pretty dark areas of your own mind and your own heart. But like I said in the last episode, our demons are nowhere near as powerful as we are. We are infinitely stronger. We are infinitely more badass than our own demons. And, you know, I'm living proof of that. I've faced off with some scary demons, but I'm able to actually sit here today talking into a phone about my experiences because I found out how strong I am. I found out how badass I am. And with being able to go through and do that, I found out that it's a lot trickier than I thought it would be, but it's not impossible. You just gotta take it slow. It's a bit of a trope, but yeah, you just gotta take it one day at a time. But as soon as you realize that PTSD isn't a bad thing, because death doesn't come for us because it hates us. It doesn't come after us because, you know, we've done something wrong. It comes after us because it's our time. We're each given X amount of time on this planet. And, you know, I haven't seen any real reason to be afraid of death. And granted, there's a lot of people that are afraid of death. I'm not. I'm not afraid of PTSD either. Not anymore, because it's not a bad guy. It's just a thing. It's an entity. It's something that we have to deal with. And yeah, there's some moments where it's going to be a lot worse. There's going to be a lot of people out there that get night terrors. There's going to be a lot of people that, you know, with the military, they still can't comfortably deal with fireworks on the 4th of July, which is unfortunate because they're the ones that are going out and, you know, putting their lives on the line, defending our freedom. And they come back, and on the day we celebrate that freedom, the sounds of the fireworks mess with them. It affects them. And, you know, that's one of the things about PTSD. You know, it messes with you. It's really good at messing with people. But it's not the end of them. You know, they will be able to find strength one day. They will be able to find comfort and solace some way, someday, somehow. And a point I made earlier, there's 7.5+ billion people on this planet with different opinions, different views, different ways of getting with PTSD, of encountering it, of experiencing it. And that means that there's 7+ billion different ways of dealing with it. So the fact that PTSD is still something that so many people are afraid of or incapable of dealing with, that's going to change. I'm going to do my part, and I hope that you guys help with that as well, because you're going to have a different way of dealing with it than I do. You're going to have a different perspective than I do. But as long as we keep working on it, as long as we keep realizing that we have this handle on it, we have a way of thinking about it, we can get through it. Anybody can get through it, because PTSD is just pain. Time heals all wounds, but it doesn't make them hurt any less. It just means that it's healed. And that's where I'll pick up in the next episode. Because apparently the internet where I live takes 14 hours to upload a half-hour video. So I'm going to try and keep them a little bit shorter just so I can keep getting them out there. But think of PTSD that way. Think of it in a way that you can actually go through and comprehend it and get your mind around it. Because, like I said, it's nowhere near as powerful as we are. It exists, but it doesn't have that much power. We have the power. We, the human beings of planet Earth, have the power. So, as for now, I bid you good night. And always remember, never give up, never surrender.